Thank you everyone for joining us for our session today. Today's conversation is what do job seekers want? I am Tamika Figaro, the moderator, and I'm also joined by Senior Vice President of Recruitment Solutions, Darren Findley. Welcome, Darren, and thanks for being part of the conversation.
Thank you, glad to be here.
So Darren has been part of the industry for 30 plus years, and he's responsible for recruitment business strategy. He has led global high volume RPO programs with companies and helped organizations grow from hundreds of employees to hundreds of thousands. He's passionate about helping organizations and find and keep talent. He works with talent acquisition leaders to find the best talent in their markets. So before we get started with the conversation, I wanted to touch on a few housekeeping items. We are recording the episode today. All attendees are on mute, but if you would like to ask a question, I encourage you to use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. All right, Darren, so let's get started.
Sounds good.
Can you give me and the audience a labor market update?
I can, and thank you for everyone for joining today, and thanks to Tamika as well. You know, we're just in these unprecedented times around the labor market, and I don't know that, you know, barring any major recession in the next year or so, that anything's going to really change. And we look at the elevated job openings, over 11 million last month, 11.4 million, I think, the month before. It really is a significant number of job openings in the market, and now you see unemployment down to around 3.5, I think it was in March. And so you have this compression in the labor market where you have a lack of available talent that doesn't seem to be letting up, you know, anywhere. The churn that's in the market as well. I think last month there were 4.4 million quits and 6 million people took new jobs. So you can see there's a lot of churn in that market, even with the remaining jobs that stay open. We've seen an increase, a slight increase, the last several months. The labor participation rate has increased, and that's an encouraging sign that people are coming back into the workforce. That'll help alleviate some of the pressure, but they're certainly not coming in at the pace that's needed to fill all the open jobs. So with that, we'll continue to see significant, you know, pressure on the labor market and continue to see significant churn in the labor market as well. Now you've got the Fed that's raising interest rates. They're trying to stabilize the market by lowering inflation. And in theory, you know, that will slow the economy down some and reduce the number of open jobs. But, you know, I'm not an economist. I played one on TV once, or maybe a webinar once, but I think there's there's still quite a bit of uncertainty around what the Fed tightening is going to do and how that labor market continues to accelerate and grow over the next several months and the next several years, about the next year and a half.
Yes, and as you mentioned, we've seen an increase in job openings and a decline in unemployment. Can you tell us the relationship between these variables?
So when you think about how unemployment is measured, it's measured against the individuals that are actively in the job market today. And so a lot of times when you see that labor participation rate go up, you'll also see an increase in the unemployment rate, because it's an equation that is a number of unemployed people that are active in the labor market against the available pool. But what we see today is that number continues to go down even as the labor market increases. So the net of that is that we're absorbing all those additional people that are coming into the workforce very, very quickly. So there's not an excess supply, you know, in labor. Again, very, very healthy, but also very competitive labor market.
So can you tell us a little bit more about how has the work from home culture affected the candidates in their job search habits?
You know, I think when you can go back and look at, you know, COVID-19 and what happened in 2020 and 2021, and everyone basically being forced to work from home and learning how to adapt to that work from home. We did a survey recently on our job seeker mindset, and part of that survey, you know, when you look at people who responded to that, 52% of the people said they're really working remote at least 40% of the time. So this new normal of hybrid work environments is really here to stay, and job seekers are really looking for that. Also, when you look back into 2020 and 2021, interest rates for new homes were extremely low. And the work from home mentality that most organizations had allowed for individuals to have the freedom to move to a more conducive or more affordable, cost of living market. And so a lot of people have moved into those markets now. As interest rates go up and housing prices continue to escalate based on the shortage of housing, we're seeing less of that, but a lot of people have already moved and a lot of people have already adapted to this work from home concept. And so even though, a lot of companies are saying they come back into work, the next several months, having a hybrid work model for most organizations is really critical, for jobs that don't have to have hands-on, direct care, like patient care in hospitals, work in manufacturing facilities, drivers and things like that can't work remotely. Other jobs certainly need to have a remote aspect because candidates want that.
Very interesting. And in fact, I'd like to remind everyone that if you have questions, feel free to use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, and I'll ask Darren. So Darren, are you also seeing any changes to the recruitment and employment process because of the change in work culture?
Well, I think it's two things. It's both the work culture that's changing, but also candidate expectations are changing around the employment process. It has to be easy, it has to be fast, it has to have an Amazon kind of effect. So you remember what I did when I was here last time when I applied, and then use that to apply for other roles. It has to be mobile, and again, because 91% of candidates today say they're applying for roles using mobile technology. The expectation about how long, it should take from a process standpoint, I think the numbers I read are like 74% of the applicants think it should take less than 30 minutes. So it really is an opportunity for everyone that's in talent acquisition. Look at your process and say, hey, how long does it really take for someone to go on and apply for a role? And if it's more than 30 minutes, you really need to take another look at that process, because candidate expectations really expect it to be speedy, and they expect it to be easy and straightforward. Without a doubt. It's interesting that, communications are also changing. Like, email is still very prevalent, even more than a phone call, so emails are answered more quickly than phone calls. Used to be, dial all the time, and get responses and talk to candidates, but email is the first way candidates want to be, addressed and communicated with, and then going to phone call. And then once that familiarity is there, texting is a really big way to continue to stay in touch with those candidates.
Oh, interesting. So are you seeing that we're losing the face-to-face interaction with candidates?
No, I don't think so. I think that because of the speed that's required from the candidate standpoint, they want to get in, get the application filled, apply very quickly. They still really value that face-to-face interaction. And when you think about how comfortable people are today with video interviewing versus where they were even in 2019, all the different measures have gone up. So whether it's a panel interview or a two-way interview or doing a one-way interview, a recorded interview, we've seen double-digit increases in the comfortability of candidates to want to have and having that interaction, with the hiring managers that they're speaking with. So face-to-face, in person is a lot less than it was, but it's coming back more and more. But definitely having that video interaction face-to-face that way is still very, very important and very critical to candidates.
So we have a question from an attendee. The question is, have you detected new outlets when it comes to how and where candidates look for jobs?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing across the board is maybe not necessarily new outlets, but just a further segmentation of the outlets that are out there. So you think about job postings and job boards, they continue to, because of the war for talent, see that proliferation increase. So there's more of those that are out there, more candidates looking in different places. Indeed is certainly still, depending on your perspective on it, the one place to go to get candidates a lot of times. Facebook and LinkedIn have gotten actually increased over the last 2 years as ways for candidates to find those. I think grassroots outlets, when you think about outlets, right, and sources of candidates, grassroots have absolutely increased over the last 2 years as individuals, again, kind of working from home, being kind of cocooned in their environment, are now looking to get out just in their sphere of influence, where they travel, where they live, where they go to the grocery store. So we see more and more grassroots activities being a positive way to to both generate and interact with candidates.
So now that a lot of people work remotely or hybrid, what has become the expectation of job seekers? And are there disconnects between leadership and employees or job seekers?
Yeah, again, like we said earlier, there's the absolute expectation or desire, maybe not expectation, but the desire to have the ability to work remotely is absolutely out there. I think that there is kind of a disconnect between what leadership and executives want versus what you see, candidates want and employees want. And so it's really an opportunity in my mind that for managers and leaders to have conversations with their employees to find out what works best for that individual. Remember, the war for talent is still on, even if you're existing. Goldman Sachs has done a pretty significant mandate around people coming back into the offices, and they're getting some pushback. I read an article in the Wall Street Journal last week just talking about how managers are feeling pressure to ensure that all their employees are swiping in at least 3 times a week, and if not 100% compliance, there's consequences for that, and that may be a strong word, but there were consequences for them not getting 100% of their team to swipe in. So when you think what that does around commute times, around work-life balance, and things that we all value, especially now post-pandemic, those are creating some tension between what the executive suite wants and what employees want. One other survey that I read last week, it said that 74% of executives that had worked remote during the pandemic want everybody to come back 100% of the time into the office. And only 24% of employees that worked remote during the pandemic wanted to come back 100% of the time. And so again, there's a pretty big disconnect between what executives and leaders want and the reasons why they want it around culture and collaboration and all those things that are important to an organization, and the value that employees have on work-life balance, commute time, social time, in the office, and how that leads to collaboration. So there is a pretty big disconnect there, Tamika, and I just think that the next several months we'll all kind of work our way through what that really means. And again, I just encourage everyone to have conversations with their teams and with their downlines to understand what works best for them, because the reality is we did not see a decrease in productivity when everybody went to work from home. And that was the biggest fear as executives, and what we had as well, is that, of course, we've been remote forever, but as we talk organizational wide, the biggest fear was this decrease in productivity. And we found across the board, across the US, there was really no decrease in productivity during the pandemic when everyone decided to go work from home. So there's still some things for everyone to figure out, just around what work from home really is going to mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you seeing the ability to apply for a job on a mobile device more the norm now?
It absolutely is. 91% of the candidates that we surveyed in our job seeker survey said they wanted to apply and applied via mobile devices. And so if you don't have, if your organization doesn't have a mobile optimized application process, then you are losing out on a significant number. And that 91% is important because if you go back 2 years, I think that number was like 74%. So it's been a 20% increase in individuals who wanted to make sure that they could apply via mobile device. And mobile device means their smartphone, just to be real clear too. So when you think about it, it's not a tablet, it's not a PC, it's literally they're applying for their jobs, on their smartphones, which is why it has to be simple and you have to be able to do it very quickly.
Yes, and I think it kind of goes back to what you said earlier about having a quick and effective form. If it takes more than 30 minutes, maybe someone will get discouraged, especially if they're doing it on their phone.
Right.
So what should employers keep in mind when creating appealing job descriptions for candidates?
Yeah, we actually did that in a survey as well. So great tip on that question. When you think about what potential candidates want to see, what's increased over the last couple of years is the salary. They want the salary listed in the job description, in the posting that's out there. They want to understand, because what frustrates candidates the most is to go through a 20 or 30-minute application process, or maybe even an interview, only to find out that the job they're applying for pays less than the one they currently have today. So they really want that transparency. They really want to understand what the salary is for that role, even if it's a starting salary. They want to understand what that baseline is on those roles. But interestingly enough, the things that we have kind of known for a long time that are important are still important. So things like benefits and understand what those benefits are. A company profile that's a strong company profile to understand what the organization does and what its mission is also important. And then one of the last major things is also this appealing job description. When you think about how we've moved, the last 20 years from, a newspaper job description, that tells you how old I am, right? Back in the day, a newspaper job description into an ATS that had job descriptions that are all kind of categorized, but job bands and job roles and minimum qualifications, and that's all it really focused on. It really is important to create this appealing job description that's what's in it for me. And when you think about the things that employees and candidates most want, they want to know about your recognition programs. They want to know about this job. Why is it exciting or why is it important to the organization? And it's really important to articulate that in your postings that are out there. Why is this job an important role to the organization? And then you go into the other things we talked about, the salaries and the benefits being very important as well. So, critical to show what's in it for me from a candidate's perspective in those job postings that are out there.
So we have another question from an attendee. The question is, you mentioned there is a continued increase in job openings. What are the reasons for employees to leave their current jobs?
So when you think about why individuals leave their jobs, there's really three main reasons over the last 4 years that we've looked at that help us understand why employees want to make a change. And those three reasons really haven't changed at all in the last, I think the last 4 years it is. And those three reasons are, number one, and the top reason is, respect and recognition in the role. So when you think about what's important in a culture, what's important around, what I do and how I contribute to that organization, recognition and respect is number one. Number two is compensation. And that compensation has been in one of the top three reasons probably for a long time, at least the last 4 years we've done our surveys. And then lastly, job fit is important. So you kind of think back to, why you want to have a job description that tells about what's in it for me and why that job and why that role is important to the organization. And not only in the new job posting that you're going to put out there, but why people stay, knowing that their job is important and why that job is important to the organization is critical. So again, the top three reasons we see why people are leaving jobs are in this order: respect and recognition, compensation, and job fit.
Thank you, Darren. We actually have another question. So what can employers or hiring managers do to keep candidates interested in the position between the offer date and the first day?
Yeah, it's a good question. I can't remember the exact number, but I believe it's somewhere around 61 to 63% of candidates are open to and willing to consider other opportunities, even after they've accepted your offer. So there's risk, right? When you think about the candidates that are applying for roles and that they're looking for something new, you've got to stay in contact with them. So there's several things that you can do, creating, this interaction that's ongoing. New hires, once they've accepted the offer, and even before that, in many cases, they want to stay in contact with someone. So having this, the really robust keep warm approach, where not just someone in recruiting, but also the person they're going to be working for reaches out, has conversations, talks about the first day, getting them ready for that first day, that first week. The biggest fear people have is this unknown, right? So the more you can create these known expectations around what's going to happen the first day and the first week and the first month is really critical in that time between the time they accept the offer and the time they actually start. One of the other things that we see a lot of organizations do is send out a welcome gift to kind of solidify and recognize the fact that they've made a great decision to join the organization. And so that recognition piece also helps kind of talk about your culture and begin to get them integrated into who you are as an organization, what their role is going to be, and helps increase the likelihood that they're going to start on day one. So between the welcome gifts, the communication, the onboarding expectations, those three things can really help candidates make that transition from one role to the next.
Well, thank you, Darren. That's all the time we have for today. And we appreciate you taking the time to answer all of our questions. And also thanks to all of you who have joined us and asked questions. We truly appreciate it. So Darren, I will see you hopefully in the next session. And thank you everyone for joining.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.